morning, everybody, and welcome to today's meeting. Very nice to see you all, and welcome to those who have come to observe and to speak this morning. The meeting will follow its normal format, and I'm planning to finish the meeting by 1 o'clock. I know, Mark, you need to get away at 1, and I think there may well be others who are the same. So, turning to the agenda, part 1, apologies, Julie.
Apologies have been received from Mr. Outhwaite, and Mr. Hatton has indicated he'll need to leave at 1:15.
Thank you very much indeed. Which takes us on to looking at the minutes of the last meeting. Is everyone happy that I should sign these as a correct record? Yeah. We should have shorter minutes and let me be quicker. I'll just sign the last page fully as well.
Yes.
Which takes us to item 3, which are Chair's announcements. Begin as ever with an explanation of fire safety procedures, which I think members will be familiar with, but perhaps not everybody in the room will be. We're not anticipating an alarm, or heaven forbid, fire today. So should the alarm go, we need to take it very seriously, and in which case we need to exit through that door to my left over there and just walk round the building to the assembly point. I also need to let you know that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. For those who are speaking, please ensure that your microphone is switched on. The recordings will be retained for a period of 12 months before they're deleted, and they're available via YouTube. We also need to alert you to the fact that photographs taken from the live stream may be used in press reports. So if any members of the public don't wish their comments to be recorded, please can you let me know now, so that we can switch off the equipment. That's only necessary if public speaking. So those, I think it's the two who are coming to speak shortly. Are you happy with that? Yeah, thank you very much indeed. That's fine. So the practicalities out of the way, just a few items I'd like to flag up under the Chair's announcements. First, I'm pleased to say that we have finally received confirmation from the Minister that we have another independent Secretary of State member joining us. She will be Juliet Bailey. She takes up her appointment on the 1st of January. She lives in Macclesfield and is currently working for a charity. She's the programme coordinator with the Rank Prize funds. She's actually a lawyer by training and profession and background. And also very helpfully, she's a smallholder, so she's got practical hands-on knowledge of farming and land management. So I'm sure it'll be a useful combination of skills to add to the committee, and I look forward both to welcoming her and hope you'll be able to meet her very shortly. The second thing I just wanted to highlight was the staff event which Mark and myself attended. Which I found a really, as ever, both enjoyable and inspiring day. I don't know if that was recorded, was it?
It was.
It was, so it would be available to watch, because Gavin and Steve between them with an absolute masterclass of summarising all the achievements that the staff in their various activities for the park have accomplished during the past year. I think Steve said he only missed out one group of people, but I won't highlight that just so I don't embarrass you.
And then ask for a wrap.
But it was an absolute tour de force. And if you get a chance to watch it, just to hear what has been achieved, it's well worth doing so. And I would, at this point, as the end of the year draws close, like to take this opportunity of recording members' thanks for the enormous amount of hard work that all the staff put into caring for the national park and indeed leading the national park during the past year. So if everyone's happy with that, I'd like to formally place that on record. Yeah, it's hard, I hope, to disagree. But, thank you very much indeed. Did you find the staff event useful, Mark? Yeah. And Gavin, as the chief executive, maintained the chief executive's record of having the team that won when we have to do. I didn't. What do you call it? It's not a game exactly. What do you call it?
Activities and challenges.
Activities and challenges.
And my victory is purely coincidental.
You obviously knew how to pick your team with care. Most of the other things I'd really like to say are in the CEO's report, so I won't repeat those. But while recording thanks, the other thanks, I think it would be very appropriate for members to record as to the Chief Executive of the Westmoreland Furnace Council, Sam Plum, who has been a great supporter of the work of the Lake District National Park and been a pleasure to work with. So again, if members are happy, I would like to formally record our thanks and ask Gavin as Chief Executive if you could write to Sam on our behalf and express our appreciation. Looking to the future, Gavin and I will be meeting her successor, Miranda Cannon. I think it's the beginning of February, isn't it? We've got a date in the diary. I just also wanted to pick up on an event I attended in October, which was Women Leading for Cumbria's Future, which brought together a really interesting collection of, unsurprisingly, very largely women. And it was set up by the Vice Chancellor of the University, Julie Manel, and Teresa Jennings, who's the Chief Executive of Brathay. So it was decided in the morning that we could actually experience what it is like if you're one of the young people who comes on a Brathay course. So we were all set off in rowing boats, which was quite entertaining. Fortunately, the boat I was in had somebody who was a very experienced rower, so knew what she was doing. And I was the navigator. And as we were on Windermere, and I know Windermere quite well, that rather helped. But I can see it would be a considerable challenge for people who've got no experience of either being in a boat or actually trying to read a map. But it was fun, but it was also a really useful networking day. And in the afternoon, we had a very inspiring talk from Fatima Whitbread, who some of you might remember as an impressive athlete in her day, and who's now an ambassador for Brathay. She does a lot of work with young people, particularly those who don't have much opportunity to get out into the countryside or carry out that sort of activity. And one of the things that I think we should do actually is get back in touch with her and see whether there are ways in which the National Park can work with her and with Brathay more closely. Finally, just to mention that I know Mark and Jackie went on the training course for new members. We've had very useful feedback with various sort of comments and questions raised. But the impression I got was that you both found it very useful.
Yes, it was really informative. Yeah. And great to see what all the other parks are doing as well.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
very good.
Yeah. So thank you very much for attending that, because I know it's get more time out of the diary. And I think that picks up everything except for I was just going to mention the launch of the Coast to Coast Trail press announcement. I think most of you, if not all of you, will have had an email from somebody called, apologies if I got the pronunciation of the surname wrong, George Jabor. Doug, I think perhaps you know about this particularly.
Thank you, Chair. George Jabor is, he has a fair few things in common with me, such as he is on the North Yorkshire National Park. He is chair of their council, and he's also on their pensions and chair of their pensions committee. Right. So apart from that, we've nothing in common. But in his year as chair, he's walked the coast to coast, and it's one of his things. to actually publicise it at every possible opportunity. So myself and the chair of of Cumberland Council were there for the press release of the passport last month, and he's wanting to do another thing. Probably, I believe it's next Monday.
It's on the 22nd in
Yeah.
Kirby Stephen, yeah.
And to get as many people as possible together to publicise that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've already got commitments for the 22nd, but anyone who hasn't and would be interested in attending, they'd obviously be extremely welcome.
And if they could let me know, if anyone's thinking of going, if you let me know, then I can try and just make sure we're a little bit coordinated from our side, and also that we definitely have representation as well. Great.
Graham and Philip.
Yeah, if you let me know what the details, I'll possibly attend if I can, as my council ward is actually the start of the coast to coast. So I have a vested interest.
Yeah.
I did send an email back to John to say that were the picture to be incorporated, I'd love to go on the second run at it, because pretty well Christmas the 27th. So I'm quite disappointed not to be on it. I'd love to have been on it. So were the picture not to have enough people, there's a second run, I'll be there.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. That brings it to the end of the chair's announcements, takes on to declaration of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest today? Nope. Takes to item 5, questions. We haven't had any questions that have been raised, so we move on to public participation. And I'd like to ask Jeff Carroll and Tracy Hodgson to come forward. You see the 2 vacant chairs. Only one. You do need to. So you're going to read out a statement as chair of the Ruskin Museum with regards to the K3 and K7 Coniston Water Bylaws exemption application. So over to you.
Good morning, members and officers. Many thanks for the opportunity to speak to you regarding our application for an exemption to the speed limit on Coniston Water to run Bluebird K7 and hopefully Bluebird K3. I make the distinction in how I pronounce those because Sir Malcolm's boats were always Bluebird, 2 words, and Donald's were always 1 word, Bluebird. The former vessel, of course, is a world-renowned record-breaking jet hydroplane piloted by Donald Campbell CBE, the latter being the world record hydroplane piloted by his father, Sir Malcolm Campbell. Respectively, they each represent the UK's engineering prowess, both between and immediately post the 2 world wars, and were born out of a patriotism seldom seen today. Bluebird K3 never came to Coniston, gaining its world record on Lake Majore, and so running her on Coniston, where Sir Malcolm piloted Bluebird K4 to record victory in 1939, is an opportunity that would seem obvious in terms of history and heritage and showing the world one of the ways that the Great was put into Great Britain. Bluebird K7, however, is a slightly different case. I don't intend to revisit the rachinations of how Bluebird K7 came into the ownership and later physical possession of the Ruskin Museum. Safe to say that many of you will know the tale well and resolve and the determination that the staff and the trustees of the museum exhibited to actually gain that physical possession. You will also probably know that K7 and Donald achieved 7 world water speed records, 4 of them on Coniston Water, which would have been 5 had the fates not intervened, and both killing and immortalising Donald Campbell in the same split second in January 1967. As I have said to numerous people, if we could gain the exemption, pop K7 onto the water, run her up and down a few times, film it, put her back in the museum and say mission accomplished, then we would. The issue is that Campbell's death was literally a day that shook the world. And after all, it was an episode in the TV series of the same name. And hence we're aware of interest nationally and internationally. Because K7 needs quite benign water conditions, we have requested the period of exemption to try and guarantee a suitable weather window as far as is possible in the Lake District. I don't think that's something you wouldn't expect. The granting of the speed exemption on Coniston for this event would enable the Ruskin Museum to enhance the already strong legacy. We anticipate significant numbers of people wanting to see K7 run on Coniston, many of them because they remember the crash and it is as cemented in their psyche as it was where they were when they heard that President Kennedy had been assassinated or Princess Diana had been killed. They feel the need for an element of closure, the best of possible results from something that shocked them to the core and took away a hero for millions of adults and children alike. This is a homegrown event proposal by people born and raised in the area to celebrate the many successes Donald and his team had with K7 and also to remember them as pioneers putting the UK first in the eyes of the world. Bluebird K7 is synonymous with Coniston as the Herdwick sheep and the old man of Coniston. We are acutely aware of the infrastructure limitations hereabouts, and it is perhaps ironic that 70 years ago Coniston had better transport infrastructure in the shape of the railway than it does today, but that's a different discussion. I would like to take this opportunity to urge members to understand that this is a time-limited, possibly one-time only event to inspire a new generation of potential engineers. The Bluebird and Bluebird stories seem to evoke a passion in people which makes them want to build models, and the quality of some of these creations is remarkable. The legacy of Bluebird K7 being in the Ruskin Museum has meant that we have been able to replace windows in the Institute Hall, redecorate, amongst many other things, safeguarding it for use by the community and beyond. And we have also taken on 2 extra full-time employees. The increase in 2024 to over 63,000 visitors compared to the pre-Bluebird numbers of around 11,000 shows the draw that the boat and its erstwhile pilot and story have. To try to manage the potential numbers, we've been working with professional traffic management companies and worked up plans for park and ride facilities to try to limit the vehicle traffic within the village. We're promoting this to try and increase uptake and help to gauge numbers and understand the distances from which people are travelling. Wherever possible, we're using local companies to provide services to try and keep as much of the economic benefit in the region. We aim to create an event which serves as a beacon of best practice on how to hold an event like this within the Lake District, minimising and managing any negative impacts on the area and its residents. And we hope we can rely on your support.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful, and you're very welcome to stay to listen to the debate. Thank you. And I would also just like to say how impressive the museum is with Bluebird in residence.
Well done, Tracy.
Oh, well done, Tracy. Thank you very much. So that takes us on to item 7, the Chief Executive's update, and that's over to Gavin.
Thank you, Tiffany. Members will have received my usual format Chief Executive's update report. I won't dwell or reiterate anything that's already stated in the report. There are 2 or 3 things I would like to raise that have arisen since I wrote the report, and on a couple of items that were covered on the written document, just provide an update on a couple of cases. The first would be item 1 and the 75th anniversary commemorations. It's just to update that since the time of writing, Andrew McCloy, the author of the proposed report, has met with Tiffany and I and spent some time, longer than we intended actually, Tiffany, although it was quite enjoyable, wasn't it? Exploring some of the key achievements and successes of the National Park over the last 75 years, discussing some of the challenges that we face in the here and now and a vision for the future for both those and national parks across the UK. The next steps for Andrew, he's going to take that away as alongside what he gleaned from the other 3 national parks that celebrate a 75th anniversary next year, and condense them down, and he's going to then explore in a little bit more detail some key case studies relevant to the Lake District and contact key individuals both within the authority and well outside our own organisational boundaries to develop those stories more fully and make sure that those key achievements are accurately reflected and celebrated in the report for next year. Beyond that, we intend to have something of a launch event and a celebration event in the early summer or late spring. We're still just awaiting confirmation of that event, particularly given that Snowdonia are one of the national parks that celebrate that anniversary with us next year, and there are Welsh elections in the May, and following that, there may be a period where there's a bit of political uncertainty. We don't know, but certainly we'll be seeking to avoid purdah and just giving us a little bit of breathing space post those elections in case there are any political turnarounds and that my counterparts at Snowdonia need to reach out to new politicians or politicians that have changed portfolio. The only other thing that I would flag that's in the report would be the distinctive area parish forums. Just to reiterate, thanks to those members that attended from the authority. They were really successful and useful events. On our behalf, Sarah Calderbank, our head of comms, is now following up on them, and I think the survey is due to go out today. We are going to touch base with the parish councils that attended and those who did not, to just explore what they found useful, helpful, or what changes they may like to see. If I had any sort of retrospective reflections on how things might improve, I suppose the only slightly disappointing thing for us, although it may not be, was levels of attendance were a little bit down, or significantly down in some cases, from the forums that we held a year ago. In fairness, that might be a sign, that might be a good thing. It might be a sign of the temperature being a little bit cooler and relationships having improved with at least some, if not all, parish councils. So I wouldn't necessarily read into it being a bad thing, but equally there was at least one forum, maybe a couple, where we were perhaps a little bit lower on numbers than we would have liked. So we'll explore those reasons and see if offering online options or different times, different venues, or possibly even a different point in the year might just help encourage greater attendance. What I will say with greater confidence is we've had really positive feedback from those parish councillors that did attend. They found them really useful and valuable sessions. And as ever, me, Tiffany, Steve, all left with plenty of new points of learning and several actions to take away and take forward. So finally, 2 or 3 things to address that have arisen since I wrote my report. I attended the launch of Natural England's new strategy for England in Carnforth about 2 weeks ago, which was really helpful and useful event, really useful for networking, but also to start to understand Natural England's direction of travel. Without going through it in any great detail here and now today, although you can find it on their website, Natural England's focus on the coming years will be obviously on the recovery of nature, but on building better places and integrating nature into housing and development, in trying to improve health and support nature's role in community well-being, and helping to deliver security, both natural solutions for food, water and climate. We also had representation in the form of Tim Duckmanton, one of our strategy leads, at the local nature recovery strategy launch as well. That's been a piece of work that partners across Cumbria have worked really hard on for a number of years now, and as a key partner, we're really proud to have supported it and to see it launched and ready. The focus now will be working with the 2 councils particularly, but wider nature-based organisations, landowners and stakeholders to drive the delivery of that strategy. And the final point I wish to flag that wasn't covered in my report fell out of the government's budget a couple of weeks ago now, and I'm sure you're all well aware that within that was an announcement that mayoral combined authorities could well be offered the powers to raise visitor levies within their area. A formal consultation is now open. Quite an interesting consultation. Again, you can find that relatively easily with a search, or if you'd like, I can circulate the link to that government consultation. I would describe it as a technical consultation. It's asking questions around how visitor levies should be implemented and the technicalities of administering them, and the pros and cons of different forms of administration, rather than a debate on whether they are a good idea or not. What government is very clear on is that they would like to push ahead and give these powers to the mayor in any given area, and then it would be for the mayor to decide whether it is appropriate for their locality. So when I say it's a technical consultation, it asks questions not, as I say, about whether you are intrinsically in support or against visitor levies. It starts to explore issues like whether a flat rate would be preferable to a percentage charge, whether all accommodation types should be in scope or whether they should be included, exclusions, whether there should be a cap on the number of nights that would be covered. It explores those more mechanical issues rather than the concept of it, which, as I say, they view clearly as they would offer those powers to mayors. It's up to the mayor to decide whether they wish to adopt them. The only other point of debate, it's an interesting one but not directly relevant to Cumbria, is whether the powers would be offered to all levels of combined authority, i.e. foundation combined authorities as well as mayoral combined authorities. Largely that's irrelevant here in Cumbria. We know that from May we will have a mayoral combined authority, or rather from May 26 we'll have a mayoral combined authority, and from May 27 we will have a mayor. The consultation closes on the 18th of February. The LDNPA, the authority ourselves, intends to submit a response to that consultation. Myself and the officer team will be working on that, and largely on these government consultations, it's the officer team that leads and makes a submission. We are acutely aware this is a sensitive issue and that members may have views on that. We intend to prepare a draft and circulate it via email for members to offer some input and comment, and also bring it to the Park Strategy and Vision Committee away hour in February. I think the meeting is, isn't it? Ideally, I'd love to bring it to a further authority away hour. That won't be possible given that the consultation closes on the 18th of February. But as ever, whether you're a member of PSNV or not, you would be welcome to attend that meeting as a member if you so wished. Or as I say, we'll also be circulating that draft via email if you wish to comment or make some suggestions. We will also be contributing to and trying through National Parks England as best we can to reach a consensus response that National Parks England would submit covering all national parks. Clearly, there'll be differences of opinions on the technical administration and on some of the questions within individual national park authorities, but as far as possible, we will be looking to submit a combined response from National Parks England as well. I can well imagine that will focus on the use of the role of national park authorities in any consultation if the mayor chooses to explore the imposition of a visitor levy, and crucially how the money is spent and how it is apportioned locally. I can imagine all national park authorities having a view on, so I can imagine National Parks England's response picking up on those key themes. I think, Tiffany, that probably covers everything I need to, and I'd welcome any questions either on the content of the written report or anything that I updated members on verbally.
Graham, and then Peter.
Can you take questions outside your report?
If you so wish, Graham, yeah.
Okay, just I wonder if you have an
I
update.
can't guarantee to answer them, but
Okay.
I'll do my best.
Right, I was wondering if you have any update on efforts to relocate Keswick Information Centre.
I do. I was intending on covering that in the away hour, Graham. I've got an update on commercial premises. What I will say in the public forum is we continue to look for alternative premises in the Keswick area. We haven't concluded anything as yet, and we haven't found suitable alternative premises as yet. That search continues. We're keeping both the town council and local residents updated, and Sarah will be attending the town council meeting on Thursday evening, and I believe Peter's going along as well. We're keeping staff informed. We're also now in active discussions with the agent for the incoming tenant at Moot Hall as well, and I'm more confident. I don't want to go further than that, but I'm slightly more confident now that there may be a possibility of reaching an agreement with them as well, Graham. I don't want to say too much more in the part one while we're still in conversations with agents, and there's still some commercial discussion between the future tenants and other potential property owners. So I've done my best for you there, because
Okay.
I believe you have to
I'll look
leave
forward to the
before.
next bit.
Yeah.
Peter and then Will.
Thank you, Tiffany. Perhaps it might be worth putting this meeting's thanks on record for the members that attend, the officers that attend the parish forums, because I know a lot of them had long journeys on, quite often very stormy nights. And if I'm right, Gavin, you said that everybody, with one exception, who was invited was there on their own volition. They weren't told to, didn't mandate people to turn up, and a lot of officers did turn up regularly and on several meetings. So I attended a couple of them. I'd just like to offer my thanks, and maybe this meeting's thanks to those people that did come out on those stormy nights to give up their evenings.
I think that's a really worthwhile point, Peter, and we'll certainly pass those thanks on, because the officers did show a real commitment and real desire to engage with their local communities in the parish council. You're entirely right. I made it very clear there was no three-line whip for the wider officer team to attend. Sadly for Steve, there was a three-line whip.
And for Gavin as well.
Yes, there was, yes. So for two of us, there was a three-line whip to attend. The rest of the staff, we made it very clear that if they wished to attend, they were very, very welcome, but they shouldn't feel obligated to do so. And I was really staggered at how keen and engaged our staff were, and how really keen they were to go and talk about the services they deliver and to hear directly from local communities. So we'll definitely pass those thanks on from members.
Yeah, they are certainly, thank you, Peter, but they are certainly very worthwhile events. Obviously, the issues that come up are common ones, and then there's usually some twist each of the distinctive areas seem to have some issue that was slightly different from the other ones that we'd talked to. So it's very helpful indeed to get sort of personal understanding of just of the differences between the different distinctive areas as well as the commonalities. Will, you wanted to raise something?
Yeah, I mean, Peter's beat me to it. I think the
Right.
main thing was how successful the distinctive area parish forum was that I was at, and it was quite noticeable, having been at the previous one at Brockhall, how much better the relationship Windermere seemed to be very much, know that there is an open dialogue now, and I think that can only be a positive thing that we can build on. I'd say the other points were the second home and short-term lets. Really positive to see a dialogue going on there, and take it that dialogue still going on with the MPs to push that further on. And the third point was, it goes without saying that what funding comes from the tourist tax really should be spent within the national park if that's where it's raised.
I'm certainly happy. Obviously, it'll be a draft response now. I want to take on board all members' views, but yeah, that'll certainly be a point that we will be stressing in the draft response that officers prepare, that there should be some degree of ring fencing and protection for monies that are raised in the Lake District, to make sure that they're spent in the Lake District, and particularly that they're spent in the furtherance and support of national park purposes. So that will certainly be a backbone of our response, and I would imagine most national park authorities' responses and NPEs will. Thanks for your comments on the distinctive area meetings. Yeah, I definitely think that that Windermere focused one, very different tone and temperature, which was really, really welcome. And we largely saw that across the board and across the park. That's the point I was referring to as well. I'm not necessarily unduly concerned about where attendance has been up and down, because for better or worse, we know that people do turn out when they're more agitated or concerned about what the authority's up to. And if things are going slightly better, there's possibly less motivation for them to do so. But that doesn't mean we should be complacent, and I'm still keen to understand if there's anything that we can do to improve attendance and engagement. As I say, whether that's online, whether it's looking at the spring, which might avoid some of those stormy nights, Peter, which might be better for the staff team as well. We'll explore all of those. But thanks for your comments, and welcome those.
Yeah.
Will.
In fact, we couldn't even get to the Ennerdale one. We had to do that online because of the flooded roads. Yeah. Jackie, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thanks for your report, Gavin. I wanted to mention something as well about second homes and short-term lets. And I was pleased that the government has seen the pressures that we're under. And I was wondering what you might think additional powers might look like.
Principally, what we've advocated for is we welcomed the second homes council tax, obviously, so that was an important step forward. The principal power or the change that we've been advocating for over the last 2 or 3 years is around change of use class for short-term lets. So to effectively require planning permission if you wish to take a property out of residential use and start to utilise it as a short-term holiday let. That's the key power that we've been advocating with government. Coming back to Will's point, because I'm conscious I didn't address it. Yeah, the dialogue remains active and open, and I'm really pleased with the support that we're getting from local MPs across the political divide on this issue. We're getting support across the parties as well, so that's really, really helpful. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Jackie.
Anything else? No. Just a couple of things. I think it is, as Gavin says, very important that this remains a very open two-way dialogue with the parish councils. And it's certainly not a question of sitting on laurels thinking, well, things seem to improve somewhat, because it's very important that we continue to do that. So I'm very pleased that Sarah's following this up so quickly. And we'll continue to keep in good touch, I hope. But if anyone picks anything up where I feel that the park hasn't been so strong in communicating with them, or there are issues that haven't been properly digested or covered, do please let myself or Gavin know. The other thing I'd just like to highlight in Gavin's report was the archaeology conference held last month, which is always excellent, always a sellout, and well worth going. And from my perspective as a chair, and my particular personal interest and professional interest, welcoming and opening the archaeology conference has always been one of the most enjoyable aspects. And the variety of speakers and the calibre and quality of speakers is excellent. And very impressive are the archaeology volunteers for the National Park, who do an amazing amount of work and are really interesting to talk to. All that said, in which case we'll move on, and we are going to look at a variety of meeting reports, largely for information. First of all, it's National Parks England. We've got 2 sets of draft minutes before us. These are for information, and I'm very conscious, as Sabina quite rightly says, these are minutes written for a working committee rather than actually minutes that perhaps are terribly easy to follow. We're without an executive director at the moment, and when we do get one, I will also follow up on what Sabina has suggested in the past. It would be helpful each time just to have a sort of summary of what had happened at the meeting, which would make it, I think, more useful for members. We just actually started to advertise for the executive director. I think we'd had some 90 something applications so far, so I wouldn't be at all surprised if we're not into 3 figures. So I have 2 days next week in my diary for long listing and short listing, and will be a member of the interview panel in London at the beginning of January. So I'm hoping that we're going to find a really strong candidate from amongst those who have applied. I'm part of the interview panel because I'm remaining my capacity as the Deputy Chair of National Parks England for a further year until I step down in June. Is there any questions or comments? If not, this takes us on to the Lake District National Park Partnership. And Peter, is there anything you have to say on that?
I have no comments, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions on partnership? I think, well, we've now got the consultation underway. Yep. So it takes us the minutes of the committees, and we begin with Human Resources.
Good morning, everyone. Just happy to present the minutes from the resources meeting held on the 2nd of September. As well as many of our core business items, we also took our annual look at the wellbeing report and placed on record our thanks to Ben and team for the very good work going on there. And we also reviewed the latest draft of the authority's sustainability strategy, which again was a very comprehensive document, but still gave the opportunity for a little bit of feedback. So happy to take any questions.
Questions, comments? Nope. In that case, we move on to the Park Strategy and Vision Committee, and we're back to Peter.
Thank you very much. A regular feature of the Park Strategy and Vision Committee of the last few meetings has been the development and production of the partnership plan, which, as Tiffany said, is now out to consultation. And as I have said in the many times we've been looking at it in the committee, I would just like to praise or comment on the quality of the partnership plan, of the focus of its objectives and actions, and it's out for consultation and getting a good number of people responding to the consultation. So happy to take any questions on any of the minutes or on that.
Questions, comments? Nope. That leads us on to the Governance Committee and Jackie.
Thank you very much. So the Governance Committee meeting was held on the 30th of July. The committee considered a range of governance matters, freedom of information, performance, complaints, and detailed updates from internal and external audit. And all the items were noted by the committee. Thank you. Thank you. We'll take questions.
Nope. And then that takes us on finally to Mark. No, not finally, penultimately, if I can say that, to Mark and the Development Control Committee.
It's the September, October, November minutes for the Development Control Committee. Once again, a good range of different planning applications for the committee members to decide upon. And I'd like to thank the committee members again for their, their great contributions. It's quite a time-consuming committee to be on, and you've got to take part. You can't just sort of sit back at the back and not do anything. So thank you very much, everyone. Any questions, of course?
Any questions? I would just add to what Mark has said, because I sat on the DCC for 4 years. It's also a really interesting committee. So it might be time-consuming, but it's time very well spent. And as it's a particularly important function for the National Park as the planning authority, it is a very important role, and would like to encourage more members, as we have some vacancies on DCC, to consider whether they would like to give it a go. Peter.
Thank you, Tiffany. Can I just reinforce that? I think it is an incredibly interesting committee, and the discussions and the debates that we have are really detailed and rich and productive and constructive, and I think it is one of the most rewarding things that you can do on the authority. So if there are people interested in joining, we do have 2 vacancies.
Jenny?
Yeah, I would be interested in joining the DCC.
Excellent. I think Mark will give you a hug at the end of this meeting. But no, seriously, I mean, do mind me, have a chat with Mark in one of the breaks and he'll let you know. But that's very welcome. Do appreciate that. Thank you. Right, I think that brings us finally to, and last but not least, rights of way and Sabina.
Yeah, no hugs for me, I'm afraid, but happy to answer questions.
Nope. Once in unquestioning form on minutes of committees. But thank you all very much indeed for those. Takes on to item 11, member representation on outside bodies and partnerships. Has anyone been anywhere or been on any meetings that they would like to report? I think the ones I've been involved with I've mentioned or have been picked up elsewhere.
Yeah, went to the local strategy, nature recovery strategy at Penrith, which was really well attended and well received. So anybody wants to ask any questions on that, please feel free.
Any questions, Graham?
I'm sorry, it's not a question, it's actually.
Oh, right. Are there any questions or comments for Jackie? No, if not, anyone's got to be interested to follow up perhaps soon in one of the breaks. It's a good time for a chat. Graham.
Yeah, I attended a meeting of the local heritage assets committee, the company-wide body in Coniston last month, and that was really interesting and useful. And if anybody wants to take that on at a future time, it's a really useful, interesting little body to look at.
So what's it called? Local
heritage assets.
Interesting. Across that before. Thank you. I think the only other one to mention would be Friends of the Lake District. I don't think we picked up on that, have we?
The Kirby lecture.
The Kirby lecture.
Yeah, absolutely. You want me to pick that up? Just briefly to say, I attended the annual Kirby lecture, which is one of the flagship set piece sort of events that the Friends of the Lake District put on every year, following a bequest several years ago that allows them to fund what's effectively an annual debate or discussion. Largely takes the format of a question time type event with a panel and a chair. Fiona Reynolds in this case, Dame Fiona Reynolds, and on the panel this year was myself, Louise Dunn, the Mayor of Keswick, and Michael Hill, the Chief Executive of Friends of the Lake District. They had intended to have the Head of Sustainable Tourism from Edinburgh City Council as well, the lady behind the implementation of the visitor levy up there. The topic of the debate and the event was on regenerative tourism. It was really, really well attended event. I think Mike told me afterwards that around about 60 to 65% of attendees were fold members, but that means a good, obviously 35–40% were non-fold members. So possibly some more diverse views across the room there. So well attended, sold out in fact, and a really healthy, strong debate as well. Very interesting debate. We focused more on the topic of visitor levies and visitor charging than we did on regenerative tourism as a wider debate, but that's possibly inevitable given Fold's campaigning on that issue over recent years. But broadly speaking, well attended, a good event and an interesting debate. The video is now on YouTube as of yesterday, so if anyone did want to look it up, they could do so.
Yeah. No, Gavin represented us very well, so it was pleasing to both of them. No, it was very disappointing that the person from Edinburgh couldn't be there because we could have heard sort of about some council that had actually advanced to some practical application. Needless to say, it was the weather that had once again got in the way. It flooded rail lines or something. That was the problem. But no, it was a very good event. Anything else? Nope. In which case, we will move on to item 12, which is the Lake District smaller bylaws. And I'm handing over to Julie at this point, and also welcoming Steve Gaskell to the meeting, who's going to be also making part of the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got a short presentation to go through. Just going to cover quickly the background to the Smaller Lakes bylaws, the proposed changes. I'll quickly cover a summary of the consultation process that we went through and the consenting process. So the current Small Lake bylaws prohibit the use of power-driven vessels that are propelled by an internal combustion engine. The term internal combustion engine does not preclude the use of electric powered vessels. The bylaws were put together in 1971. Obviously, since then, the technology has moved on. We are seeing now quite a few, certainly on the navigable lakes and to a certain extent on the smaller lakes, hydrofoils, lighter weight electric powered engines, and they are using them on a variety of the lakes as well. These bylaws have been overtaken by changes due to technology and a large number of visitors to the Lake District. We've seen increased use of the smaller lakes for recreational purposes, probably generally because the electric powered vessels are now much cheaper, more widely available, I would suggest. So whilst many of the uses of the lakes, like paddleboarding, kayaking, canoeing and swimming, are appropriate for the smaller lakes, we have seen an increase in the use of vessels powered by electric motors. So in summary on the proposed changes, the definition of a vessel has been amended to include watercraft that may be used beneath as well as on the water. This is to try to future-proof the bylaws and think what might be coming in the future. The definition has been amended to include remote-controlled vessels or autonomous vessels, again to try to think about the future issues, although we currently do have radio-controlled electric vessels too. The definition of power-driven vessel is currently defined as a vessel propelled by an internal combustion engine. It is proposed to maintain the prohibition of power-driven vessels using the small lakes. The definition will be amended to prevent the use of vessels powered by internal combustion engines, electric engines, and any other such engine with moving parts that converts power into motion, whilst permitting the use of paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, sailing vessels, anything that's powered by yourself. In relation to bylaw 5 at B, we propose to amend the exemptions clause to permit the Environment Agency to use electric powered vessels. Just going to summarise now the consultation we did, which was early part of this year, April, May sort of time. We've now completed the informal consultation with the statutory consultees and all known landowners using land registry. Together with the public generally, we consulted 166 people. We actually got 233 responses back. Of those 233, 209 opposed the changes to the bylaws. 64 responses specifically mentioned Bassenthwaite, and 104 responses did not mention any specific lake. So approximately about 63% of those who opposed the changes are anglers. So at bylaw 5D, we have listened to what the anglers are saying to us, to their feedback, and added a specific bylaw relating to the act of angling to ensure any angler will always be permitted to use an electric powered vessel for fishing purposes. That's what we're proposing. This bylaw reads as any person engaged in the act of angling in possession of a Lake District National Park Authority approved fishing permits in compliance with any conditions imposed by the Lake District National Park Authority from time to time. And that was a result of the consultation process that we went through. Other proposed changes in bylaw 5E, we've also allowed for anyone wanting to apply for consent to use an electric powered vessel on grounds of protected characteristics as defined by the Equalities Act. This could be due to a disability, for example, or due to age, those sorts of things. They would apply to us, they would be given permission. Also in bylaw 5E, we have the ability to give consent to any existing permitted activity on the 1st of November 2025. For example, the hire of electric boats on Esthwaite Water, where Graithwaite Estates manage that property. We also have developed a proposed consenting process, which is Annex 3 as part of the papers. The authority has sought to ensure a cooperative and transparent process which will enable applicants to provide well-informed applications. Any changes, and this is important, to the consent process will be subject to public consultation and approval by this authority committee if there were to be any change in the future. Under bylaw 5C of the Small Lake Bylaws 2025, the Lake District National Park Authority may grant written consent or permission to any applicant to use a power-driven vessel on one or more of the small lakes, consent will usually be given in the following circumstances. Individual demonstrates the need to use a power-driven vessel as reasonable adjustment under the provisions of the Equalities Act, as I've already mentioned, or for any permitted activities existing on the 1st November 2025. This would allow any business, perhaps landowner, to apply to us to say, we currently run this business, we'd like to continue, please. And just to summarise, the proposed consent conditions we are suggesting generally exist of electric powered vessels only, speeds no faster than 6 knots, which is in line with some of the speed restrictions on Lake Windermere, display a unique identifier, which would help with enforcement if we need to go through with enforcement, carrying a copy of the consent letter, and potential restrictions on areas of the lake or no boating zones, such as we've got on Bass and Thwaite. Use of designated launching points, and any pollution events are reported to the relevant landowner and the Environment Agency, and any other conditions as may be appropriate. But those are the ones we're suggesting at the moment. The key thing here is the consent is for the person who is applying, not for the vessel. That's it in summary. Happy to take questions, Chair. Thank you.
If I could just add a couple of things. So following the publishing of the report, we have received a further representation and a suggested amendment to the wording of the bylaw, which I consider would be appropriate to make. So the amendment is at bylaw 5. And currently it says the use of a power-driven vessel in circumstances necessary to the proper execution of by the following persons. What they have inserted is of a lawful activity by the following persons. So I'm quite happy to insert that and feel that that's appropriate in the circumstances. And then just so that people here are aware of the process, we've gone through the informal consultation. The next step in the process is to make an application to DEFRA to ask them to consider the bylaws and make appropriate comment. They have 30 days in which to respond, but that response could simply be, thank you, we've received it and we'll look at it in due course. So I don't know how long a response is going to take. They will come back with comments. There are additional documents that I need to submit, such as copies of the responses that we have received to the informal consultation. Once we have DEFRA's comments, it comes back to us to consider any comments that they have made. Once that has been done, we would then have to go out for a further public consultation, formal consultation process. So members of the public will have an additional opportunity to make comment at that stage. Following the formal consultation, it will then come back to this committee, and this committee will then have the opportunity to decide whether or not they wish to adopt the new bylaws. If members decide to adopt it, it takes effect 28 days after we have adopted it. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of process left to go through. There is a further opportunity for feedback. So just to give you an idea as to the timescales, when it goes to DEFRA, I'm afraid I can't answer, but when it's returned, it will probably be at least another 8 to 12 months before the bylaws actually take effect. So I hope that that helps.
One further update following the meeting that we had with angling representatives and Mark Fryer and Marcus Campbell Savers earlier. I've had a follow-up discussion. I was due to meet with Marcus Campbell Savers again ahead of the final written report coming to members. Sadly, that couldn't go ahead. I'm sure people are aware Marcus has had a fairly busy week, to say the least. But I did manage to speak to him yesterday, and the final concern that he had was around 5D. And it's the National Park Authority approved fishing permits. And I think the anglers were keen to see a long list of what was approved and wasn't in the bylaws. I explained why that probably wouldn't be a good idea, practically or legally speaking. But what I did explain to Marcus was the ongoing consultation process that Julie's outlined, but much more importantly, that we would engage with the angling community when the LDMPA is sitting down and pulling together that approved list of permits. So we will listen to them, we'll make sure that it reflects all the existing permits and relevant permits that are in place and that nobody gets missed out. So I've given Marcus some comfort, and he will pass that on to the angling community, that we'll sit down and we'll draw up a list of approved fishing permits in consultation with them. He was very happy with that at that point.
Thank you. I think that moves on to questions and comments. I'll start with Mark.
Hi, Julie. The bylaw 5E, where you can apply for consent, will there be a charge for that?
We're currently suggesting there wouldn't be a charge, although we could recover our costs. Certainly for anyone that's applying for it under the Equalities Act, we don't think that would be reasonable. And people currently applying for permissions to buy a permit on Bassenthwaite, which is a property that we own, we manage. They already pay a fee, and we're not suggesting we'd extend that fee at all. It would remain the same. But yeah, thank you.
And just to make the point, if fees are charged, they can be charged by the owner of the lake bed, rather than us imposing a charge for them to get permission.
Any other questions? No. It's quite a substantive report. So it does take some digesting. So it was actually very helpful to have your summary presentation, Steve. This was something, as you'll notice in the paper, that was set out as an action in the 25-28 business plan. So it's good to see that that's underway already, as a plan that only started in 2025. So it's welcome. It's obviously a fairly tortuous, lengthy process, as Julie has just outlined. And it's also been more than time consuming for the officers involved because of the extent of the consultation. But I think it's very important that there was such extensive consultation, and equally so that we have listened to it and tried to accommodate it. If there's nothing else, nothing else to add, we can then turn to the recommendation that we consider the feedback, which we've just done, approve the proposed Lake District Smaller Lakes bylaws 2025 as drawn up in Annex 1. Subject, thank you for the word, subject to the minor amendment that Julie referred to, and no doubt we'll be able to write up in the minutes for us. I'm not sure I could remember it word for word, but I'm sure Julie could repeat it if members wanted to. All happy with that, good. So we approve the consent process outlined in Annex 3, and we also authorise, as is often the case, we pass it on to the Director of Sustainable Development to make any consequential adjustments to the documents in the light of the decisions at A and B. And members agree to officers submitting the revised Lake District Smaller Lakes bylaws 2025 to the Secretary of State for consideration. Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. We've been sitting for about an hour, so I'm going to suggest that we take a short break of 10 minutes before we then move on to look at the next item, which takes us to Coniston. Thank you. When you get to the actions, you just say part of the meeting that goes out. It's got to be at the end of the formal meeting, so thank you everyone. You see everybody moves about that street. Not talking about so good. Help you there. It must have been yeah, it must have been.
Okay. That's fine.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you very much. Like on. And also just to reiterate my thanks to Julie and Steve for the very comprehensive report that we considered for the Lake District Small and Lakes bylaws. And we now look at another very comprehensive report on the Coniston water bylaws. And we've heard something about that already this morning, and I'm going to hand over to Steve, but also to welcome Sarah Spicer at the end of the table, who's also contributing to this discussion. Steve.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. So, morning members. Whilst normally I would be determining the exemption applications to our bylaws, on this occasion I felt, given the strategic significance of this particular application, that I would bring it to your attention and work with yourselves on its consideration. What I also need to say at this stage is please appreciate that we as an authority are only here to consider the application as it relates to the bylaw exemption. There are other aspects in the application which relate to the wider event associated with the running of K7 and K3, but that is not something that we need to consider through the bylaw exemptions. That is something that the Safety Advisory Group, led by Westmoreland and Furness Council, need to consider. So I ask that we focus simply on the running of the two boats as an exemption to the bylaws, please. I don't intend to go into detail. You've heard from Jeff Carroll at the beginning more details about the running of these two boats, and Annex 1 sets out in detail the application. There is a consultation process that we follow for any application to the exemption, for the exemption to the bylaws, and that has been duly followed with regard to this application. And Annex 2 contains for you the standard evaluation for all such applications. Sarah Spicer has had responsibility this time for doing the analysis of this particular application, working with the teams here and working also with external agencies. And the recommendations and conditions attached to that recommendation is included in Annex 2 for you. Since the drafting of the report, we have had confirmation that both Gondola and Coniston Lawn have been in discussions with the event organisers and are both supportive of the event, having no issues. There will be liaison with those two and others as to the actual running of those events, but I'm satisfied they are supportive. Also, just to give you informative on K7, K7 has reached speeds of up to 156 miles an hour on the trials in Butte. And then in terms of Coniston Records Week, the average speeds in Coniston Record Weeks are around 120 miles an hour, with some limits, with some records being up into 130, 135 mile an hour. And certainly we have had an experience of a catamaran reaching 150 mile an hour. So that just is an illustration of the speeds that can be reached in such events. So I'm happy, Chair, to take any questions, and I will look to Sarah to assist me in that, but hopefully I ask you to take the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
So the scenario that terrifies me is, I've spent a lot of time at Coniston over the years and seen the volume of people who visit the place to get on the water. We all know from experience the middle of May can be some of the best weather that the lakes ever experiences in a year. So my
the scenario that really alarms me is that you have lots of people on the water and you've got 10 craft trying to look out for people straying onto the course over a 5-kilometre length. So each canoe has got to effectively be covering 250 to 500 yards as a safety measure to ask people to not go onto the course because they have no power to prevent. And then a 150-mile-an-hour vessel comes flying past. Do you believe that the volume of safety covers the length of the course?
Sarah, can I ask you to go first?
Yes, thanks for that question. Yes, we have been liaising with the applicants, and the initial discussions, well, there wasn't going to be any additional safety boats looking for the people on the lake shore, for example, and other lake users. So we did suggest that number. Retrospectively, looking at that, yeah, it may not be enough. So I'm presuming the applicant would be up for discussion to increasing that number because they have got quite a lot of people and safety boats, canoeists groups who are interested in obviously getting involved. You're right, people can't be stopped. There is a right of navigation, but I think with the advanced signage that's going to be out on site, publicised beforehand, there's going to be a lot of information about this. People should be aware the event is taking place, and experience on the other lakes. For example, when the Great North Swim's on, there's a right of navigation through there with the safety kayakers, things like that. Advice people generally do acknowledge that and take it on board.
Thank you. Jim. Yes.
More the recommendation. Conscious that in the week since I've read the papers, been a number of changes and a number of things revolving on this. I'm just wondering whether our recommendation should change slightly and we approve the exemption in principle and we delegate to Steve the opportunity to fine tune the conditions. I'm just conscious that reads quite firm and we could, Steve, tie your hands for discussions you and Sarah are having with the organisers over the coming months. Just sort of worth checking before we sign that off. Would it be helpful?
I'm also going to get some legal advice from Julie, because what I need to be able to do is give the event organisers the certainty of being able to hold the event, primarily because they need to submit all of the traffic regulation orders, etc., by January. And there are other tasks that need to be done. Hence, I need to give them some certainty, but I'm understanding that you are doing that by giving us the principle subject to. So I'm just looking to.
I was just scribbling that.
All right. Good point.
Just one other thing. If you drop the word principles, the members approve the exemption, subject to conditions can appendix B or amendment by yourself. I'm just conscious this has evolved quite a lot in 1 week. I'm sure there'll be a lot more, and I don't want you to have to come back to us every time you change a condition.
Can I make a suggestion? So I suggest that we slightly amend the recommendation. So it reads, members approve the exemption to the Coniston Water Bylaws 2010 to permit Bluebird K7 and Bluebird K3 to run on Coniston Water, subject to conditions approved by the Director of Sustainable Development.
Yep. Is that okay? Right. Will, you want to come in?
Yeah, Steve, I don't want to go too much over what you said, but just to clarify, we're just looking at the bylaws here and not at the numbers of people that may visit.
So the numbers of people are to be taken into account, I would say, but that The management thereof is very much about the safety advisory group, Will. So we need to be cognizant that there could be a maximum of 20,000 people each day. That's what we're being told. And thereby that is why there is unusually a condition contained within here which states that they need to, the event organisers need to work with Westmoreland and Furness Safety Advisory Group. And I need to be sure that that is happening, hence the condition in there. So it is unusual trying to work through, but we are simply looking at the exemption to the bylaw, Will. So that's the challenge I think everybody is trying to work through, including the event organisers.
Just seems a strange way of going about. I have great faith in the safety advisory group, but it seems like a huge ask for them to be dealing with 20,000. I know there are not many events within Westmoreland and Furness which draw those numbers.
Yeah, just to support that. So the next safety advisory group is tomorrow, because we're going to meet as soon as we'd met today to see what the outcome from today is. And also supporting the safety advisory groups, there's 2 working groups. There's a traffic management working group and there's also the communications working group. So they all feed into the safety advisory group.
If I can just add to that mix as well, in that the Cumbria Strategic Visitor Management Group has also met and we're in liaison with the Safety Advisory Group and we've asked them to report back to the Strategic Visitor Management Group. That enables us, the authority, to have a clarity over the meeting of the conditions set. Well,
Jenny.
I believe the speaker also said about having park and ride facilities to go to the event as well. So that would take a lot out of it, wouldn't it, really?
If I could just intervene at this point, please. We are here to determine whether or not an exemption should be permitted to the lake bylaws. We do not have control over the event. We do not have control over the event management. That is a matter for the event organisers and to deal with the authorities that are relevant for that, which are the highways authorities and so on. So we can consider that when granting an exemption, but actually it is not high up. Our concern is when the vessel is running on the lake, are appropriate security and health and safety provisions in place to make sure that the number of members of the public that may be present are going to be sufficiently protected. With regards to the traffic and all of the other issues surrounding a large-scale event such as this, they do not fall within the remit of this authority. I hope that helps.
That's very helpful clarification. Thank you. Philip.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding all the toing and froing and this and that and all the potential problems, I do feel that I would like to say what a fantastic thing this is. You know, it's absolutely fantastic. You know, to be able to resurrect Bluebird and to get it going like that, notwithstanding all the problems and technical difficulties, absolutely. But you know, I'm sure that the good folk who are pulling it together are doing the best, and I feel that we should be supporting them in this because it's such a fantastic project. Thank you.
Thank you. Sally, I think you want to come in.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure if it's the right place to bring this point up. It may be more of a policy moment, but I'll mention it and you can tell me where to take it for that, Chair. So it's to do with emissions and noise. We are signing up to the partnership plan, which suggests that the Lake District National Park is going to be carbon neutral, so it's going to capture more emissions than it emits. And so it's part of the assessment process. I feel that there should be an element in there that assesses the actual carbon impacts of any events we're giving exemptions for. It may not apply to this bylaw, I'm not sure. But for example, it says the emissions from the boats are negligible. And So, but what does that mean? I mean, a boat going 150 miles an hour on the water must be used, creating quite a lot of emissions. We're all involved in climate and nature advisory groups and local nature strategy partnership reports. So I would like that to be considered when we're looking at planning, looking at exemptions, but whether it's for this committee or not, I'm not sure. Whether it's for this decision or not, not sure.
Thank you for raising that, Steve.
Yeah, I take the point raised, albeit I would say it's probably not, this is where we have the challenge. It's not the boat necessarily, it's the a number of people coming which will create the carbon. But what I think you make is a very valid point, Sally, and I think what we'll do is amend the template for future evaluations. That is a consideration.
Just to be a little bit more technical, what are the carbon emissions that we'll produce and how will we balance it?
Yeah,
thank you.
That's fine.
That is a good point. Anything else anyone wants to raise? Chris?
I understand Sally's point about the emissions that we're making of the boat going that fast. It's not going to go that fast for very long. It's the negligible. I think if we follow the word that Julia gave us before, we can happily make this event happen. That's what we wanted it to be. The only problem is Steve is fiddling about with the small exemption. So I propose we go with Julie's wording and move it.
Okay, Jackie.
And just echoing the sentiment over there, really, you know, they fought so long to get the Bluebird to Coniston. To not celebrate it on the water would be, in my opinion, a travesty.
Jim?
I'm very supportive. I think it is a fantastic opportunity, but I share Mark's concern, particularly May weekend. The sun shining. I think one of the Lake Wardens once told me we had 3,000 people on Coniston one day, so it can get really, really busy. So it is a challenge. Can I just check that the visitor management group are also considering the on water safety, not just the roads and the organisation off water? Because I don't think we are probably equipped to take that responsibility on ourselves. I think it probably requires more advice, and I would welcome them assurance that they're also going to take a lead on what happens on the water as well as the water.
Yeah, and so linked in with that, obviously, we're involved with the Lake Ranger team, involved with all the briefings as well when it actually happens, so each morning, as well as making sure the pre-discussions.
But we will make sure that on water is a safety consideration for the safety advisory group, and also I'll make sure SVMG looks at it.
You could, Steve, and I'm thinking details like insurance policies and all those qualifications and everything else is carefully checked through.
Yeah. Jenny?
Yeah, regarding the carbon emissions, Bluebird's not going to be going up and down all summer, is it? It's just going to be a one-off sort of thing. And yeah, I think it's a special sort of event for Coniston as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, could I just clarify? I didn't mean for this specific event. I was really talking about a sort of policy guideline in when we're assessing events generally. I'm not opposed to the event or the Bluebird going up the lake at 150 miles an hour. I just think in general, we need to be watching emissions on events that we're involved with in any way.
Yeah.
For future examples, Sally, I think me and Steve fully agree. And yeah, for clarity, if an event like this was coming forward again, and when we're looking at that in that more holistic way, it wouldn't be the emissions of Bluebird that we were concerned about. It would be the emissions of 20,000 people coming to Coniston that we would be wanting to assess and look at in the future.
Anything else, or have we covered that now? Anything else you wanted to add? No. So, no. Well, I think we've given that good discussion. I think certainly one of the action points we would ask you to take away is looking at the number of safety boats and to discuss that with the applicant, because I think the points that have been made by Mark and Jim on the safety on the water is of critical concern to us. We have the modified statement by recommendation by Julie, which I'll get to in just a second. Also, the importance of discussing this with the Visitor Management Advisory Group, which I think again was a helpful suggestion. I'm also very supportive of this, and we've talked about the weather. I hope for the event they do get good weather, and it proves to be a success, but it will be quite a challenge. So we wish you all well with that. So the proposal we have as a recommendation in front of us now is that members approve an exemption to the Coniston Water Bylaws 2010 to permit Bluebird K7 and Bluebird K3 to run on Coniston Water, subject to conditions to be approved by the Director of Sustainable Development. Is everyone happy with that? Thank you. And I should also thank Jeff for explaining to me the difference between the spelling of bluebird with or without a gap. So thank you all very much indeed for considering that, because it's obviously a very important topic. So that brings us to the close of our formal meeting, and we will move on to the away hour. So that's just for members. So if I could thank you very much indeed, Jeff and Tracy, for coming this morning.